My name is Goro Fujita. I've been in the entertainment industry for over 15 years and fell in love with this VR medium. So first question was, it was less of a question, it was more something, a request to cover this from Sam Luck. Because I covered it, I talked about it in Mike's stream last time. It's like how important the grid actually is, right? So a lot of times in VR, if you create, you might think the grid doesn't matter, right? So you can have a face like this, like angled in space, and that is fine, but the moment you want to duplicate stuff and stuff like that, it's sometimes really good, especially if you create like architecture and stuff, to align everything to the grid. So the thing about the grid is if you hold the left hand index finger trigger and use the line tool, it snaps to the world grid, right? So the thing is, like, let's say you have a house like this. Let me quickly draw like a house. So like I said in the beginning, this is not about pretty pictures. This stream, it's more about workflow stuff that helps you to create. So let's say we have a house and we have this house angled like this. And I want to add windows to this, right? So then I end up having to, having to draw it like this. Because if I use grid snap, all of a sudden, it's like all completely offset, right? So this is like a problem because I can just place the windows like this, freehand. It still works, but it's not going to be as convenient, right? But if you create the house, let me invert it this time, like this, and keep using the gizmo, right? Then what you can do is that you can actually use the grid snap and create a window like this, boom, and then push it in space into this, and then and then distribute it like this, right? So now it's all aligned to the world grid, so I can like quickly do stuff like this, boom, 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 and then I already have a big building. So this is actually like super important, especially also when you do like endless loops and stuff like that, because let's say you have like a road with trees, and you have a car here. Look at this perfect drawing. And then when you want to move it, you can move it along the gizmo. Now, if you have this rotated and you select it, then it becomes really difficult. And even if you put it in a group, the new group will have the gizmo aligned to the center. So now how do you get this right? You can say like, oh, I just do it like this. But now the gizmo is offset, right? What you can now do is like you create another group and put this in another group and hope that this is straight, but it's not going to be straight, because there's a slight angle still in there, right? So it's not going to perfectly align. So this is something to look out for whenever you create something, even if it's like organic shapes, which I'm going to start doing right now. For the first question was the dynamic light demo. So I'm going to draw a little bit of ground here. Even then, I make sure that I'm on the plane, because when I put characters in here, they will automatically align to the world grid. So it's a good habit to use the grid as a guidance always when you create stuff. Also, when you bring this into Maya or Blender, just for reference, one square, like one edge here is equals 1 meter. So this is something also good to know when you export stuff. And I'm gonna cover like how to prepare your files for exporting to 3D tools as well in this tutorial. But I'm not going to show how to do it, but I'm going to show what to look out for and how to prepare your scene best. I'm on color dots, actually. I want it to be on normal mode.
Goro, do you know in the future if they're going to indicate that 1 meter per grid? Like, is it listed in like documentation somewhere?
I can put it in one of my tutorials that I do in the future, just for reference. That's a good idea to mention that. Okay, so basically what I'm doing right now is I'm creating like a little environment really fast. Doesn't have to be pretty. This is a tree. And we have a canopy like this. And then let me colorize the canopy a little bit. And I could separate these all in layers right now, but for speed purposes, I'm not gonna do it. And you see like I'm using a little bit of a darker value here because this is going to be like the overcast setting. So I'm gonna colorize it a little bit. And I think the canopy can have a little bit more color. And if you have questions how I do specific things, you know, if you see something like, oh, how did you do this? You know, don't hesitate to ask, because I can cover it right away. So, okay, well, now we have the trees. Okay, this is probably good enough. Maybe some bushes, some greens. So you see, like, I'm using the duplicator a lot with the Alt trigger, which is the left index finger trigger. So maybe I make the grass a little bit cooler. Okay, so this is good. Let me import a 360 image. So here I have like a blue gradient, which is basically just like a 1K by 1K image. I'm gonna bring it in as a 360 accurate rectangular. What it does, like it creates like this spherical image, which is cool. So one trick here, again, it has to do with the grid. When you turn on the transform, you can just move the sphere around, right? You can move it in any place. If you go to transform and reset transform, it jumps to the center. So this is like really, really cool because now with the gizmo, you can just use the y-axis, hold the y-axis and scale, and now you have the perfect horizon line, right? So it's like perfectly aligned to the scene. So you see like that it is like, otherwise it would be angled, and this is a way how you can make sure that it's like perfectly aligned. So let me hide the notes. Let me put the notes up here. Okay, so I covered the alignment, so let's go to the dynamic light demo. So Tyler challenged me with that question because this is actually a really difficult thing to do in Quill, and there's no easy way to do it in like a setting like the work from home pieces where it's an indoor scene. But for an outdoor scene like this, there's a quick, easy trick you can do to simulate dynamic lighting. So for that, I'm gonna call the shadow. This is the shadow layer. And then I'm gonna duplicate the whole layer and call it highlight. Now, in Mike streams, I said don't use color dodge to do the highlights. In this case, I'm gonna do it anyway because it's faster. So make sure if you
Goro.
do highlight colors, boom, right? So you can do something like this. It's only to show workflow, right, Tyler? So calm down. All right, so let me do another light source here. So I'm gonna create a light source. Boom, this is my sun. And then I'm gonna animate the light source. So I'm gonna turn on the record feature here, so auto key. And I'm going to, I want to create a loop, maybe at 5 seconds. So until 5 seconds, I'm gonna animate the light a little bit. So basically, let me set this to stepped curves first. So I select all keys, set it to steps, so I don't have any in-betweens for now. And then I'm going to move the light source over here, move the light source over here, maybe move the light source over here, and then it returns. All right, so let me space it out a little bit. And then I select all, and I turn it into spline curves. What it does is like now you see the light source moving, right? And you guys might think, oh, but Goro, it's not a light source. It will be. Just trust me. So I'm going to put this in a sequence, loop it. I'm going to put the highlight in a sequence as well, in the same sequence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a keyframe here for the highlight. And before I do this, I'm just going to shift it slightly, right? Maybe just ever so slightly like this towards the light. Just like this. And then maybe a little bit more. Just like this. And then I go to the next keyframe here, and then auto key is on, so I get auto key, and then I follow the light. Maybe a little bit over here. And then I go to the next keyframe. Where's the light? I'm just gonna follow that white sphere. Something like this. And then I go to the next keyframe, follow that sphere. Oops. And then go to the last one. Actually, the last one has to be the first one again, but that's okay. Let me turn on the loop here. And what happens now is like it creates an illusion that the scene is lit by that sphere. It's pretty cool, huh? So
Nice.
so this only works for stuff like this. Imagine I would do that in a room, the walls would move, so it doesn't really work. And it doesn't work like it's like a directional light, right? So it's not a point light nor a spotlight. So this only works in certain scenarios. If you want a spotlight or if you want a point light, that's gonna be really difficult to do in Quill with the current tools available, because you would have to like paint it frame by frame. Another thing you can do is you could, like, for example, if you have the highlight, the shadow layer, right? So let me hide the animation. So you have the shadow, you duplicate it, and let me color dodge the crap out of it again. Oops. Is it doing it? It is. So what you can do is like you blend in between those, right? So if you have like a scene change or something, you can do that over opacity. So here you can switch to opacity keyframes, and then you set a keyframe here and set a keyframe here, change the opacity down. So now what it does, like, and you have to do the same here on the highlights. Let me call it highlight. HI is fine. And then set a keyframe here, set a keyframe here, and then this one will be transparent. So now you can blend in between those. So it's not a clean blend, right? So what you can do is like, okay, I want to blend it in. Oops. While this is blending in, I'm gonna blend out the. Yeah, this looks cleaner. See, so this is like another way how you can change dynamically the lighting to a lit scenario. So if you watched my little short film about the ducks, I have a scene in the end where there's like a mole mother turns off the light, and I used like basically a switch between two scenes. So if in that case, because it was a light switch, it's much easier to do. So what I'm gonna do is like, I just do this. I didn't do it via spans. And then boom, oops. So it switches. So that's how you can do light switches. So you have like different, you have a highlight version and you have a shadow version, and then you just switch spans. So for light switches, this is much, much easier. So you just have to paint two lighting scenarios and control it via spans, versus the this version where you fade in between. Be aware that at this moment here, through the transition, there's two sets visible at the same time. So if you know the performance panel, you will see that it will start peaking because it's rendering both scenes at the same time. If you do the span technique for switch, it will only use the draw calls for that specific layer, if that makes sense. Can everybody follow? Yeah?
I follow.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay, let me.
I'm a bit confused, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to cover. Don't worry, you will get more confused. You can rewatch the video.
We can just go back and forth in the tutorial later. And
This is just the beginning, right? So okay, so I covered dynamic light. Let me create a looping puzzle piece, and while I create the looping puzzle piece, I'm also create a character, and I prepare him as if I would do it for animation and render. So that way I can cover 3 birds with 1 stone. Okay, let me start with the environment first. So I'm gonna create. Let me create a folder for this and call it BG. And let me check the time. We're like 15 minutes in. I have to be a little bit quicker here. Let me call it ground. Maybe I just do everything on 1 layer just for speed's sakes. So maybe there's a guy driving in a forest or something like this. So I'm just gonna create a ground here, duplicate. And if you ask how did I just duplicate so fast, it's basically doing, sorry, I think I have to cover rain later, so it's gonna be a dark scenario. Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bit darker here. Yeah, so if you duplicate something and you redo, it maintains the offset and keeps redoing the last action, which is like super, super powerful. I use it all the time. So this is the forest ground. Let me put some bushes here. And if you have my screen full screen and you get nauseous, because I'm moving my head so much, you know, just look at something else for a while and just listen to me. But I think a lot of people here are immune to motion sickness. I'm not actually. I'm actually still get pretty sick pretty often. Not often, but if I play games or something, it happens pretty easily. So let's do some trees. Like this. So sometimes I also use the trick that I just showed you guys for the dynamic lighting. I just duplicated it slightly, and then I choose a color and do like a little paint over like this, right? So you get like cool little lighting effects. So this is the trees. This is good enough. So I'm building a puzzle piece to loop. So this was going to be my foundation, and I'm also going to build 2 markers, and the markers will be basically where the loop is going to align to the next puzzle piece. So I'm just going to build a marker here and build a marker here, and I'm usually going to do it on an extra layer. And I leave a lot of slack because later on it's easy for me to select. So I'm going to cover this later, but I call it marker. And save it, and then I'm going to create a character. So when I prepare stuff for render, right, so I have to like make sure, I think Garrett was asking me a question the other last week on how do I make sure I can apply different shaders on the same character, right? Because if you have the whole character in one layer like this, then this is going to be one shader. Of course, you can say like, hey, I'm gonna colorize it like this. Maybe he has jeans on. And then you can bring this in and use the vertex color, right? To basically apply a shader with vertex color on him. But what that means is it's still gonna be one shader, right? If you want to have multiple shaders, you would have to have different layers for each shader, right? So let me do a face first. So I'm gonna do a line tool here with snap. So the line tool is your friend if you want to like export to 3D because it's like super clean. So I'm gonna turn on the actual wireframe so you can see what's going on. So this object is better than if you do something like this. Because if you do this in Blender or Maya or something like that, you will see all the spaghetti and all the intersections and stuff like that, right? So this way you can basically create like a pretty cool, smooth character, just like this. And then you say like, oh, I want different, so this is skin. And then you want eyes. So sometimes what I do is like, okay, eyes, I want to have an extra shader, but maybe I want to combine some of the other items. So these are the eyes, right? And maybe the hair and the pants are the same. So what I'm gonna do is here, I call it black or blue. Let's do blue. And then to do hair, I also use the line tool. I changed the brush size while I'm drawing with the line tool. And then I do the grab tool, move it up, and then I hairdress him, just like this, right? So another good tip, you don't have to do all the hair just to be mindful of like geometry. Just put like a foundation in here. Sound like a makeup artist, huh? This is the foundation. And then I add hair on top. Just like this. and maybe break it up a little. So that way I don't have to worry about the entire back of the head, and I can seamlessly transition into like a solid shape. And one thing also, if you want to like paint like ears and stuff like that, right? It's good to follow the shape of an ear. So if you draw it like this, it will look pretty cool in a render. Will actually look like an ear. So let me put this on a new layer a little quick. Transform, reset, flip, and X, merge with skin. And now I have a mirrored ear. Okay, this is good enough. I'm gonna do a neck. And then for the body, torso. Let me see if, okay, we're 20 minutes in, 23 minutes in. That's good. Let me give him like a torso. Like what you could do is you do something like this. He's gonna be sitting in a car that I'm gonna build. And then I might use something like this for the arms. And you could do it also with multiple strokes, but I just want to keep it like pretty simple. And then I'm going to go to the skin layer. Similar to the ear, right? What I'm gonna do here is like maybe he has some big guns, right? Like nice biceps. I'm just gonna put it in there like a muscle. So that way it will look really cool. And then same with the forearm. So the forearm has a taper. But then let's give him some climber forearms. Do the same thing. He has like a muscle here. And then you see like the silhouette looks already pretty cool. And then for the hand, what I usually do is like something like this. And then you see how much I use the line tool for this. And this doesn't mean it's only for render. It's also like for actually Quill content. I usually tend to use the line tool because the line tool is super good to optimize. So you can optimize it really well. So this is, see, it's very clean. So this is like another reason why I do this. So, let's do this and put it here. Oh, small hands. All right, this is pretty good. And then let me duplicate the whole arm. So I'm gonna duplicate it, put it into a new layer, hit transform, reset, pivot, flip in Y or in any axis, move it into place, boom. And then you can merge it with the skin layer. Oops, merge, and now it's like merged. Okay, so for the pants, I don't want too many details, but let's say I want the shirt, the torso, and the pants to be the same material. I can just stay on the layer and use the vertex color later, right? So I can just draw the legs like this. And you know, like if it's dark, it's more forgiving, so you can. Sometimes I break up the silhouette like that to add a little bit of, maybe there's a pocket here, something like this, right? And yeah, he has a small butt. Let me make it a little bit larger. Yeah. Shrink it down a little. No questions so far. And then the legs. So I'm not gonna do the feet for now. He's like just driving. The legs are a little bit thin, so let me give him some beef here. Use the thick and thin tool. It's looking good. And then I'm gonna put the legs onto the skin layer, so you can always say like, oh, I forgot to separate it. You can put it into the skin layer and then save, right? So now I have the blue hair.
So when you do the thick and thin tool,
yeah,
it does add geometry, correct?
No, it doesn't. It always works with what you have. So if you see, you can actually see it here. Oops. See? Nothing gets added. This is the real wireframe that you're seeing. But if you use the optimization tool, you see that it's actually altering the geometry. And if you use this now, you see it just works with what it has. All right, so
Cool.
now this way you have like the skin shader, you have the torso, and the pants, you have the eyes, and you have the hair separate, right? Now if you bring this into Maya, so you go to like basically here, you can hide everything else. And you go to export Alembic, and you say like export animation if you have animation. If you do that, then you will see that you will bring in separate objects. Now, Garrett is asking, how do you manage to animate? So this is like the difficult part, right? And this is like, there's no easy solution for this. So if you want to animate this guy, you would have to do this. So new frame, new frame, new frame, new frame, new frame, oops. So, and then here, you see like I have 2 frames now, and then I use the select across all visible layers, and then I animate him. Like this, right? So now I have this, but you can see I'm still like having separate layers, right? And then I go to the next, maybe there's a hold, and I'm like boom, 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 and now I can pose. Yay! Yay! Yay!
So he's dancing in the car.
Yeah, basically. but
Set
this
or a
this is
wreck.
this is how you can maintain layers, right? So you have different body parts for different shaders for different body parts, and this is how you could export this. It's getting painful if you have like 20 layers and you always have to create new frames like this, but this is the only way to maintain the layers right now. If you use the bake function, which I'm gonna show at some point, this is not going to work because it's gonna bake everything down, so then you have to rely on vertex color. Makes
Sorry,
all
Goro,
sense?
Yeah. Sorry, Goro, where do
Hey.
you select like the selection over the layers
Yeah.
that you did earlier?
In the
Ah,
selection
okay.
tool option, select in all visible unlocked layers. Be careful though, because if you like, the cool thing is if you select this, you can see that it's also switching the layers, see? So this is a quick way to find like, oh, which layer is this one? Which layer is this one? You can
I
see
see.
it switching. But if you select everything, right, then it's like all selected. Be careful with this because sometimes you forget to turn this off and you think like, let's say you have a lot of rain here, right? And you think you're adjusting the hand and all of a sudden you move the rain as well. So be careful with this functionality because it's not always straightforward. In this case, yeah, somebody else had a question, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really helpful.
Yeah. Anyone else questions?
Hey, Goro.
Yeah.
You're not keyframing any of this, right? These are not transform keys. You're just
Yeah, because I was talking about bringing it into 3D, right? So I'm gonna.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I show.
I'm gonna cover transform keyframes and baking next, I think. Let me see. Create a character for animation and character and bake animation. Perfect. Okay, so we're half an hour in. I think I should be able to make this all. Okay, so I'm gonna give my guy a little bit of color. Red nose, drunk driver, and the hair.
Drunk driver from last week.
Oh yeah,
It's the same guy.
Continuing Mike's
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
the Napa driver. Okay, so torso.
Well, a lot of wine up there.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna add skin, and like vertex color actually goes a long way. You might have seen my render of my working from home piece. I was actually pretty impressed on how much detail you can get out of vertex color. So just by adding like those little small gradients, it really adds a lot. So ideally, you know, like you don't want to deal with layers and stuff like that, and you want to like merge everything, because if you animate in Quill, it's easier to animate everything in one layer. So let me remove these guys here and make it eyebrows. So I'm gonna paint eyebrows here. Okay, now you guys know how I set up stuff for render, so I'm gonna break it now, right? So basically, what I'm gonna do is like I turn on the select across visible layers and make it animatable, easily animatable for Quill. So I'm gonna select the whole head because I want to show you guys like bake animation, and then I'm gonna create a new layer and call it head. And now I have the head. Now I select this guy, call it neck. So now I'm creating a rig basically in Quill. And then we have the right arm, left arm. I think I'm gonna use, let me think. Yeah, I'm just gonna use one layer for these arms. So let me move that up, arms, and then the rest. Oh, I forgot a finger. Let me put this into the arms layer, merge, boom. Okay, I think the body is fine. Maybe the torso, I'm gonna select on a separate layer. Okay, and this one is empty now, empty. Okay, so this is the guy. Save, and then let me build a car a little quick. So because I painted the guy like in like an angle, you know, it's hard for me to put a car. So maybe let me do something really simple. Maybe it's a go-kart or something, just to save some time. It doesn't have to be like a full-on car. So let me just use a new group, call it car. And then I'm going to use the line tool again. Line tool is my friend. And I do like a little go-kart. Always try to reuse what you have, right? So, something like this. And then we have maybe red seats. And this, let's colorize this a little. And I turn this off. Let me do this. Just select the leg and bring it wider. And this is way too big. So this is the frame. I don't know what go-karts look like. I didn't go kart racing for a while, so let's see. Something like this.
It's looking good.
Thanks, Mike. Approval from a car fan. I'm gonna do like tires. So I'm
So
gonna
you
do
haven't gone kart racing for a while. Do you have a secret history in kart racing?
when I was back in Germany, I loved it. I used to do that a lot, actually. And
Oh, cool.
throwing like turtle shells at people, you know. But, so let me add some motion blur. I love kart racing. I went a few times here in California as well, but it was
Has
frustrating
anyone done
once.
the one in Tokyo?
Ooh,
Where
the one
you can drive all, yeah.
with the Mario
You can
Kart
drive. That looks
costumes.
amazing.
Yeah. So let me do this. So I'm already painting the motion blur, right? So this is like a tire. So this would be also good to align with the grid, but for speed purposes, I disregard it for now. And then I think there's like an engine here. It's in the back, I think, with like a gas canister or something. Oops, let me turn on the snapping. There's a gas
Carburetor.
canister. Yeah, and then some random cables. And then let me fill this up with some random stuff. Boom, random frames. And maybe there's like is it like this? Something like this. And then I think I can move this back. And then we have the pedals. I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff because you guys all know how to paint, so I try to be fast. It just needs to sell the idea. And then the tire, I'll bring the tire down here. I think it's good enough. And then we have the steering wheel. Steering wheel coming out from, oops, do this. And then and this is going to be something I'm going to put together with the arms, actually. So I'm going to go to the arms layer, put on a new layer, merge it. So now it's within the arms layer. And then I'm just going to put it here because I'm going to rotate over this. And then I'm going to fix the arms. So let me build a fist around. You get the idea. Oops. So I'm not gonna bother to make it perfect. There we go. Same here. We're 40 minutes in. I think we can get to what I wanted to do. Can also go a little bit over, but I think it should be enough time. So we have this, we have this, we have this. And now if I put the pivot of this arm here, I should be able to kind of like fake rotation. Yeah, it's good enough. Okay, so save. The arm is a little bit off center. Let me just quickly fix that. Just like this. Let me bring this arm down a little. This is good. The shoulders up. Okay, so this is looking really good. Now I'm gonna cover the big animation. No, I totally forgot the tires. Okay, let me do the tires first. So what I usually do is like I like to animate everything in 24 frames per second. So anything, if it's frame by frame animation or if it's like if it's keyframe animation, I make sure that it's always a divisible by 24 or 12, or it's a multiple of like multiples of like 6, 12, 24 and stuff like that, right? So what I mean by that is like, let me quickly finish his legs. Actually, I'm gonna give him shoes, very simple skater shoes or something, you know. That's good enough. There you go. That was good. Okay, so now let's go to the tires. So for the tire, I'm going to place this here in the center. So let me see if I can actually reset pivot. No, it's not going to be in the center because it's not like a perfect sphere, perfect circle. So let me just quickly eyeball it. But it might look actually pretty cool because it's kind of off axis. Yeah, this is good enough. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna oops, this is a set transform keyframes. So I'm gonna do one full rotation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna select set a keyframe here, and then I'm gonna rotate half a turn, a quarter turn, 1, 2, 3. With the index finger trigger, holding the index finger trigger. I forgot to turn on auto key. So now with the index finger trigger, I hold the blue axis and then 1, 2, 3. 1 frame forward, 1, 2, 3. 1 frame forward. Oops, I think I'm off axis. Let me try again. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, now it's correct. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I know what's going on. Sorry about that. Make sure you're on stepped curves because it doesn't interpolate in between. 1, 2, 3. Now we got it. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, that's a good.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now you hit all, and now it's like you set it to linear, and then you put it into a sequence and loop it at the last keyframe here, and then it will turn, right? So I don't know why it's not smooth. Let me see what happened there.
Do you have one too many
Oh yeah,
frames?
one too many. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I make sure that let me go. I want it to be 12 frames long because I want it to be a multiple, right? So I'm gonna remove the loop and set the loop point here, and then I'm going to just distribute the keyframes evenly because I want to be able to. Oh, it's kind of slow. I think for the tires it's okay. It might be forgiving if it's not looping perfectly. So I'm going to just leave it here, just for the sake for baking later. Okay, so this is the tire, and then I'm going to duplicate it. That's good. And then I'm going to duplicate it one more time. Well, you know what? What I can do is like I create a group, put these in there, and then duplicate the group and mirror it in Z. There we go. It's a fast way to do stuff. So I think this is good enough for go-kart. And let me see what the time says. Okay, we're 42 minutes right now. Okay, so this is good enough for go-kart. So I want to animate the character. Let's see, this is the cart. And this is the guy. And then I will put the guy and the cart in one group. Okay, now I want to animate the head, right? When I animate with transform keyframes, I make sure that it's always in a group. The reason is then if I want to add something, a layer, like for example, a hat or something, I can just add it to the group and it will be animated as well. So basically, I want the guy loop to be, let's say, 5 seconds long. Go to 5 seconds exactly so you can check. And then I'm gonna do the loop here. Okay, so now I have the head in a head in a group anim. So this is gonna be the head animation, and then we're gonna put another group with a neck, right? So this is gonna be the neck, and then I think that's fine. That might be enough. And then I have the arms, so I'm gonna put the arms in a group as well. Arms, hard to type. Okay, so now for the arms, I'm gonna bring the gizmo here. What I did
Just
before.
heads up, you're about 15 minutes till.
Yep. Should be enough time, hopefully. Okay, so now you see the loop ends here, right? What I'm gonna do is like I set a keyframe at the beginning, set a keyframe at the end, and then I isolate this keyframe with these work area buttons. So these brackets define a work area, so it stops right there, right? So if I set this to loop, it loops a specific area, A and B point. And if you hit all, you can remove the work area again. So this is like the After Effects work area. So I'm gonna basically set it like right before I'm gonna stop the animation. I'm gonna prevent it from looping. So what I'm gonna do with the record function on, I'm just gonna animate the arms. Okay, so last keyframe should be deleted because the last thing always jumps to the movement you did, so it's like it gets kind of choppy. So if you delete the last frame and then hit all and play it back, it's gonna be super smooth and it's gonna loop perfectly. See? So this is pretty cool. So now we already had animated the arms. Now we have to animate the head wobble, right? So for the head wobble, I'm gonna bring the pivot right here, and then let him nod, right? maybe turn it a little bit. And then instead of keyframe at the first, I have recording on at the entire time, right? I do the same thing, block it here, and then I hit play and rotate. Okay, delete the last keyframe. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another group in here. And now I just animate. I do the same thing, set a keyframe at the beginning, set a keyframe at the end, bring the pivot again here. So I can do something like this. That's good. And now, delete this one. I record again. And then I do the other axis. Okay. So now I delete it, hit all, and look, we have him now bopping around, which is like pretty cool, right? And then you could do the same with the overall head. So for example, if I want the neck to move as well, so reset pivot, now I put the pivot here, right? So on top of that, I'm gonna layer another animation. So I do the same thing here, keyframe here, go to the isolate the last keyframe, and then I do this. And of course, I didn't record, so let's do that again. I love how immediate it is, you know? So I can do stuff like this. Okay, now let me delete this last keyframe. You will see it adds more complexity to this. And then you can go into the torso and stuff like that, but you get the idea, I think. So I'm going to not cover this. So now we have the whole card, and then let's bring back the background. Where did I have the background? Okay. Ooh, it's way too big. So let's make it smaller. Just like this. So now the question is like, how do you bake this, right? Before we bake this, I'm going to make, so we have a 5-second animation here, right? So this is the card. Let me save it. And then I'm gonna create some smoke, some dust. So because it's 5 seconds, I think for dust, I need like 24 frames. This is exactly 1 second, 24 frames. If I loop this, if I'm not wrong, the loop point should line up perfectly with the guy, see? You can see that the loop point lines up perfectly. If I have 1 frame more, you see that the loop point offsets, right? So now, because I used full numbers of seconds, I know that if I have 24 frames per second and I fill up a layer with 24 frames, the loop point will match at the 5-second mark. Can you follow? It's a little bit abstract, but hopefully you can follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then now I can just animate, because I don't want to animate like a 5-second smoke, right? So that would be like crazy. So I'm just gonna make it like this. Okay, I have 10 minutes. You know, what did I want to cover? Seamless background to create distant clouds loop, iron floor level spawn areas. Okay, I might not get to the iron floor level spawn areas. I will see, but I want to do the distant loops for Tyler, distant clouds. So I might go a little bit over, but this is working now. So the cool thing is now, now I can turn off the select in all visible unlocked layers. And then for the smoke, I want to select them over time. And then I'm gonna adjust them a little bit in color, bring them closer to the ground color. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna duplicate this. Boop, boop. And then I'm gonna select this layer over time. So I offset it a little bit. So I select this over time until I have all the layers, and then add the highlight. Let me turn off the onion skinning so you see like really cool effect here. So you have like, and you can change the light afterwards, so you can change it. This is pretty cool. All right, so now we have the cart. He's ready. He's ready to drive. Oh, I wanted to show some effects too. Okay, let me do this little quick. Animate the background first. So I'm gonna put the cart outside of the background because I'm going to loop this. In order to do this, I do it like really quick. So I'm gonna create a new group and call it like BG loop. Or BG anim. And then I have the background here. I'm not gonna make it mobile ready for now, and I'm just gonna duplicate it so the markers line up more or less perfectly. And then I duplicate it a few times with redo. So now I bring the whole background here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move him from this portion to this. Right. So what that means is like I'm gonna create another marker on a separate layer, not inside the group. So let me create another marker here. It lines up with this. So this is going to be my reference layer, right? So I'm going to here maybe 1 second, and I'm going to animate. Oops. At 1 second, and I'm gonna turn on record, animate it so it lines up perfectly with the other marker. So now I offset it by 1 segment. I loop it at this point, and if I'm not wrong, it will work perfectly. So now you see like that it gets cut off there. So all it's doing is it's just shifting it back and forth. So what you can do with that sky dome now is like you bring the sky dome closer, make it smaller. Oops, come here. And then it just disappears into the sky dome, which is pretty cool. So you don't see that jump. You still see it here a little bit. So let me bring the sky dome even closer. And now if I go outside, you see what's happening. But if you go inside, it looks like a seamless loop. Isn't that cool? So the cool thing is because this is independent from the go-kart, you can change the speed of the background animation on the fly with just changing the keyframe, right? And at this point, I want to delete all the markers. So what I can simply do is like I go to select across all layers, and I just delete it. And because it's not frame by frame animation, it's like instantly updated in all frames. Pretty cool, huh? So now I have this animation. Now, if you are like trying to make this like mobile compatible, and you want to bake this animation into frames, so this is like the way you can do it. So now, this animation, the guy animation, is looping. Let me see, the cart is looping. The guy is separate. So let's say I want to merge the guy into 1 layer. So right now he has like tons of layers and we have like 24 draw calls already, but I want to merge this into 1 layer. So the bake function shows itself when you set a sequence to loop. So now the sequence is already set to loop, and at 5 seconds it's looping again, right? So what I have to do is like simply press the bake button, and the bake button is like, let me go to the loop. And then if there's no loop, you won't see the bake button. It only works on loop because that way you tell Quill how long should I bake until this point, right? Until the sequence loop point. Let me see if Quill doesn't die on me when I do this, because this is a pretty lightweight character, I think. If I hit this, it will freeze for a bit. And now I have the guy baked layer. If I hide this, now it's frame by frame animation. And now look at the draw calls. Went down to, I optimized it by 5 draw calls, right? So now it's a frame by frame animation. So this is how you can do this. This is like really, really cool. Now when you export this to Maya, you have 1 mesh and you can turn on the vertex color. So we're like 5 minutes away. Let me see what else I have to cover. The reflection I can cover, but maybe effects. Let me do like a little effects layer on top of this. So let me go back to remove the baked layer because I like keyframe animation better because it's smoother. And I'm gonna turn off the sky. And I'm gonna make the sky a little bit darker. Okay, this is good. And then I'm gonna create some rain. So for rain, let me call it a FX layer. This is like a really cool trick that I usually do. I use the flat brush here, and I use the grid snap, and I just paint a bunch of rain droplets. Oops. And the reason I use the flat brush is it's really easily optimized. So if I optimize at maximum, it will look the same because it's just like just straight strokes. So now I have this. Let me turn off this. And then I duplicate it a few times and rotate it. So I get like a little bit of randomness. Just like this, I create like a rain volume. It's like a really cool, neat trick. Just shift it a little bit so it doesn't look repetitive. Okay, now I have like a decent rain volume here. It's regional. It's fine. And then what I'm gonna do is I create another group here. I put the rain in here because I want to animate groups. And what I'm gonna do is I animate in stepped curves. And then I'm just gonna animate the rotation of the rain, right? So with stepped curves on, I animate on 2s. So I go 2 frames forward. You can see it here. 2 frames forward, turn auto key on, and just rotate it. 2 frames forward, rotate it. 2 frames forward, rotate it. 2 frames forward, rotate it the other way. 2 frames forward, rotate it randomly. 2 frames forward, rotate again. 2 frames forward, rotate again. That should be enough for a seamless loop. And then go to the parent layer, select sequence, select loop, and hit play, and it should look like rain. Right. So this is like how easily you can do stuff like this, you know, which is like really cool. Right now the I think we have blue skies, so it doesn't make sense, and I leave it kind of gray. But this is how you can do this, and then you can also turn on the opacity to like something like 25%, and then it looks kind of nice. And you can also of course scale the rain layer, make it a little bit tighter on him, so if you're like close by, it looks really nice. And maybe you want to change the direction. Yeah,
That's so cool.
this is pretty cool. So this one's pretty
Nice.
quick. So I'm out of time, but I'm gonna keep going a little bit because Tyler asked for clouds. Let me
Bell doesn't dismiss you, Goro does.
let me see if I find lightning flash. Sorry, I didn't get to that one, but you would use the same technique I showed in the beginning. You duplicate the whole set, move it up, make it like super bright, and then you time it, if that makes sense. So I kind of covered it, but you just have to use the same technique for like a split second for 3 frames or something, where you can do the lightning. So you have a lightning version of your set and you have a shadow version of your set, and then you just swap them out. And that way you
Gotcha.
can create something. You don't even have to swap it. You just turn the lightning on for 2 or 3 frames by shifting it vertically a little bit. So that way you get like this cool top lit scenario where you have lightning. Does it make sense?
Yeah, and then,
Okay.
and you shift that layer
Up a
over
little.
in time so that it's, well, I mean, like, right, like you leave a long gap. When it strikes.
Yeah, exactly. When it strikes, you just use a span to make it visible, right? Reflections, I think you covered well last time, Mike, so that's fine. And then the distant clouds and spawn areas. Let me just cover distant clouds and spawn areas. I cover some other time. So let me do distant clouds. So the cool thing about transform keyframes. So let me create a clouds layer. So I'm gonna now the layer structure is getting super messy, but I don't care. Clouds, and then I put the clouds into another sequence, and then I'm gonna draw some clouds. So. And I'm gonna draw them in a circle, Tyler, because this is gonna be pretty cool. More denser clouds here, and then select all of it, colorize it a little bit darker, and then, oops, too dark. And then duplicate it and add a little bit of highlights. Just like this. So this is how you would do the lightning as well, right? So just like slightly like this. Okay, we have the clouds. Let's do this. So what you can do with clouds is like you take this layer here and you rotate the clouds now, right? But you rotate them over like 2 minutes. So that's the cool thing. So you go like 30 seconds. This is like a minute long. So you go like you create a frame here and you create a frame at 2 minutes. And then you turn on auto key and you do that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you set this to loop. And then you do all in linear motion, interpolation. And now the clouds should be moving. Let me see. Are they moving? Oh, I did the wrong layer, so linear motion. So now they are moving ever so slightly, right? Now if you're down here, it looks like the clouds are moving over time.
Oh, cool.
Does it make sense? And the thing is
That's
like,
right.
and the thing is like, the cool thing is if you duplicate this now and scale it down, then you get parallax, right? Because, oops, make sure that I'm like
That's
not
awesome.
on a full
And
frame.
You don't have to redo the just scale it.
Yeah, so now I can say that the closer clouds, they move a little bit faster. And let me do a different loop point here. So I have to create a new sequence, right? And then this one has a different loop point. But now you see like the clouds parallax. See? So now if you're like in here, some of the closer clouds move slower, faster than the background clouds. So you can create like easy
Cool.
parallax like that.
Oh man,
Okay,
you gotta
well-
put a twist. You got a tornado out.
So yeah, we're like, let me just quickly add some sounds to finish this off. I prepared some sounds. So we have the car engine loop, we have the rain loop, we have the music. We don't need the music, we have the wind. Okay, so for the car engine, I'm gonna put it here and play it back, spatialize it, attenuation, and make it like logarithmic maybe. Let's loop it. No, linear is nice. Yeah. Okay, we have this. And then for the rain loop, we just use stereo. And then for the wind loop, I show something cool. So I spatialize it, right? So you hear the loop, and you hear it from the right ear, you hear it from the left ear. So with the attenuation, let's make the attenuation fairly large. Okay, this is good. For the wind, I want the wind to sound like it's coming from everywhere. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to animate the wind, so positionally. So what I'm gonna do is like, let's see, I'm going to hit record and puppeteer it and make sure that the loop point is kind of, let me mark a loop point. So I'm gonna create like a marker. Here's where I want to loop towards. So I go back to the loop point, to the sound layer, hit play, and let me make the scene a little bit smaller. And then I do this, play. Just animating, 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 and loop. So on the last keyframe, I'm going to hit sequence and then loop it right there. So now you see the sound source moving around. If I'm in there, you will hear the sound coming from everywhere.
That's super cool.
So when you can hear it actually, right? So the sound feels like it's like moving around you.
Mhm.
Make the car engine. It's good. Okay, so we're like 1 hour, 7 minutes in. I was able to almost cover everything. Eye level spawn areas deserves more time. Reflection, mic you covered. Everything else I was able to cover, I think. What do you guys think?
Awesome.
Awesome, mate. Yeah.
This is really awesome, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me turn off the sound really quick because the sound is a little bit violent. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions right now. We can have a few minutes Q&A, but other than that, we can call it a day.
Do you are you going to put this scene on like a PBR render and do like you do sometimes with the renderings? In Maya and stuff?
Probably not, because I already destroyed the structure, and I don't want to.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I don't want to mess with it. You know, it's only a demo. You know, so it's two different mindsets. If you prepared for like render, you know, if you prepared for VR, it's like completely different mindsets and headspaces. So you just have
totally,
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Goro, if you wanted to extend that rain further out into the horizon, like if that rain from the driver's point of view, does it look like it goes way far out, or like could you just copy it more?
It does. Like
of
if you're here, yeah, you could copy anything. I mean, you could do it, yeah. But
you could just drag it forward, right?
Yeah,
It
but
wouldn't matter.
I mean, you can duplicate it, right? Like you can. Where's the rain? Let me find the rain. I think
Just
it's
move
this.
that whole like.
Well, you can just duplicate it, right?
Right, got it. As long as it doesn't clip the sky.
Well, you wouldn't see
Yeah,
it because
it's all in. None of it's moving. They're all static relative to the go-kart, so it works.
exactly, yeah. So now,
Yeah.
now you have like a full rainstorm, right? See? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Any more questions?
Cora, I caught a tail end of it, but this is super fun.
Cool. Who is this?
Alonso.
Alonso who? Martinez? No.
Martinez?
You are? Oh, holy shit! Good to have you here, man. This is awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna record this and I'm going to put this online on YouTube so you can rewatch it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Man.
I think we actually broke the record for max viewers. I think we peaked at 32.
Nice.
So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope this was useful. I really try to, you know, keep things as transparent as I can. I know that I showed some pretty complex stuff, but if you rewatch it, it might make more sense. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the stream.
Thank you, Goro.
Definitely.
Great as always.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really cool,
Cool.
Goro. Thanks.
Cool.
man.
All right.
you.
So I'm gonna prepare the video and then I'm gonna put it online later. Hopefully today. If not, you will see it in the next couple of days. So see you next time.
All right, man. Thanks.
Over
Thanks.
See you,
and
Goro.
out.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Thank
cut
you. See you.